Hello, everyone. So today I thought I'd do something different. I started taking Google's web accessibility course on Udacity. It's a free course, by the way. I always want to learn more about accessibility, but it's kind of one of those things that it just didn't fit into my roadmap at the time. So this year I'm kind of taking a different approach. All those like bookmark courses, articles, books, what have you that I wanted to check out and I never did. I've been going through all those. So first stop was accessibility. So, and I learned this in like the first 5 minutes of the course. So I really like the course so far. So, this is from the WCAG 2.0. They have different techniques. This one is technique H44, using label elements to associate text labels with form controls. So apparently, when you have a checkbox and a label, not only are you supposed to be able to select the checkbox by clicking in the square, but you're also supposed to be able to select the label to select the checkbox in terms of accessibility. And I know, especially anyone who uses Emmet for VS Code, if you type in, here, I'll just do it, input colon checkbox and hit tab, the name and ID pop up, but they're both blank. And me personally, I would only give something a name. And then, of course, the name would match the for attribute for the label. Like I always knew that those were supposed to match. But a lot of times, if I wasn't doing anything with the input element in JavaScript, I would never even bother to give it an ID. I think I usually would just delete it for whatever reason. And so when they showed this example, I was like, well, why isn't here? I'll delete this. I was like, well, why can't I, select this? And it turns out the for attribute is what actually controls this, and it's has to be matched with an ID. So I just made a couple notes on the side. The label element associates a form control with the label, so that's why the for attribute, the name, has to equal the name for the input type. And then the value of the for attribute must be the same as the ID for the form control. And for me, I used to always omit the ID for the most part, unless I actually had to select it with JavaScript. And I guess I had these confused. I always thought the for attribute had to equal the name, but actually it has to equal the ID. What a lot of people do is they also give the name the same value as the for attribute and as the ID. And of course, the ID has to be unique on the web page. When you do this, this technique allows the user to click the label as well as the checkbox to select the checkbox. So what I'm going to do up here, where it says name, I'm going to add an ID, and I call it details everywhere else. I'm also going to call it details. And remember before, when you clicked on the label, nothing happened. So of course, click on the checkbox, it selects it. But now when I click on the label, look at that, there it goes. And I can just toggle it. So one thing to take away, if your input type checkbox does not have an ID, this technique will not work. So you will not be able to select it. That's why you should always have an ID, as well as a name and a for attribute. They should all have the same value. And another thing I did not know, when you have a checkbox, the label is actually supposed to come after the checkbox and not before. I think a lot of times when I use a checkbox, I put the label first, but it's actually supposed to come later. If anyone's interested, I attached the link to the W3C website where I got this information from. And I'll also leave a link to the code pen just if you want to see. It's really nothing spectacular, but you never know, maybe useful to someone. But yeah, I'll probably continue to do maybe little mini tutorials like this just because I'm finding accessibility really interesting. And like something as small as this, I had no idea why it worked the way it worked, but it was interesting to find out, to tie all the pieces together. But yeah, thanks for watching.